12 Stories. The knowledge, clarity, and insight you have been waiting for.
Before we start, standing disclosure, and this week it needs a second sentence. Several stories this week involve Anthropic, whose AI tools were used in the production of this show. We have known contacts there. Our editorial decisions are made independently. Anthropic has no role in what we report or how we report it. This week also involves Amazon, Anthropic's largest investor and, through its Nova model line, a competitor. That relationship is in the story. It belongs in the disclosure. 12 stories, 1 week. Here's what happened.
Story 1. The government shut it down. On June 12th, the federal government forced Anthropic's newest models, Fable5 and Mythos5, offline. They remain offline. What's confirmed? The shutdown happened. A Commerce Department directive ordered it. A license is now required even to transfer these models, and Anthropic's other models are unaffected. What's disputed? The severity of what triggered it. The government says another company flagged the guardrail bypass. That company was Amazon, Anthropic's largest investor, and through its Nova model line, a direct competitor. So the entity that triggered the shutdown is also the biggest financial stakeholder in the company it flagged, and a rival to it. That entanglement complicates any clean government versus Anthropic reading of what happened. For its part, Anthropic calls the flaw minor, already known, and present in other public models too. It calls the shutdown a misunderstanding and warns that if this standard holds, new AI releases across the industry effectively freeze. The administration tells it differently. An official, speaking anonymously, says the government tried to get Anthropic to pause the release and couldn't, and that the bypass is serious enough to keep the models offline until federal defenses are hardened, possibly within weeks. A separate administration official has put it more sharply in public, saying Anthropic flatly refused. Anthropic says it never refused to fix anything and was never shown the specifics of the flaw. Both sides are describing the same event. They disagree on what it means. The government hasn't put its full reasoning on the record. The specific vulnerability behind the export controls hasn't been published in a form outsiders can independently verify, and no neutral body has publicly assessed the severity claim. The independent expert commentary that does exist leans toward minor, not a unique threat, but some of it comes from researchers Anthropic itself briefed, so it isn't fully disinterested. On the public record, the severity dispute can't be settled either way. What is not in dispute, for the first time, whether a frontier AI model stays on the market was decided by the government, not by the company that built it. Story 2. One man briefly owned $1 trillion. This week, Elon Musk became, briefly, on paper, the first person in recorded history with a net worth above $1 trillion. It lasted hours. What moved the number? SpaceX went public, ticker SPCX, priced at $135, roughly $75 billion raised. Valuation approximately $1.75 trillion, the largest IPO in recorded history. SpaceX is not one company. The S1 consolidates Starlink, the launch business, xAI and its Grok model, and a semiconductor operation. One IPO document, one ticker, one public owner. Inside that S1 is a disclosure that matters. Anthropic is renting AI compute at the same facilities where xAI trains its competing model. The terms: 90-day mutual termination. That is, competitor as landlord. Anthropic's AI infrastructure runs, at least in part, on facilities owned by a direct rival. On a lease, either side can end in 3 months. That is structural concentration. It is a finding unique to Anthropic. It is the shape of the industry. Story 3. 4 AI CEOs asked Congress to regulate them on bioweapons. Dario Amodei, Sam Altman, Demis Hassabis and Mustafa Suleyman sent a joint letter to Congress this week. They asked Congress to mandate screening of DNA synthesis orders, to require that any purchase of DNA that could be used to engineer a pathogen be flagged before it ships. They are asking to be regulated on something they believe their own technology makes more dangerous. The letter arrived alongside a new benchmark. On hard biology questions, AI systems now score at the level of domain experts and beyond them. The labs writing the letter have seen that number. They know what it means. This is not lobbying for a lighter touch. This is 4 competitors aligned on one ask, in writing, to the body that writes the law. Story 4. Apple pulled Siri AI out of the EU. At WWDC on June 8th, Apple announced that Siri AI will not ship in the European Union with iOS 27. Apple had asked the EU's Digital Markets Act regulators for an 18-month exemption from the interoperability requirements. The Commission rejected it. EC spokesman Thomas Regnier was blunt. The choice not to ship Siri AI in the EU is, in his words, Apple's and Apple's only. Apple's request for an exemption, he said, was simply not on the table. One detail that tightens the story. Siri AI runs on a licensed Google model. This isn't only an Apple EU fight, it's an interoperability fight between the US tech stack and European law, playing out through Apple as the visible party. The July 27th ruling is the live test of whether American pressure moves European governance. Across the European Union, the next iPhone will arrive without its headline AI feature. That is a legal limitation, not a technical one. Story 5. Cities are voting against the buildings AI needs. On June 9th, the Seattle City Council voted 9-0, unanimous, for a 1-year moratorium on new large data centers. Facilities above 20 megavolt amperes, extendable. New York could become the first state to pause if Governor Hochul's legislation passes. Nationally, more than 70 cities and counties now have bans or moratoriums on new data center construction. The AI build-out requires physical infrastructure at a scale that communities are beginning to refuse. That refusal is now measurable. More than 70 cities and counties, one unanimous council vote at a time. Story 6. Congress drafted a bipartisan AI bill. A bipartisan discussion draft in Congress this week, the Great American AI Act, would do 2 things: preempt state AI laws for 3 years and mandate audits of frontier AI labs. It is a discussion draft. It has not passed. It has not been voted on. What it tells you is that there are members of both parties who believe the federal government should take the ground before the states do. The same week a city council voted 9-0 to stop building, Congress floated a bill to tell states they can't write their own AI rules. Those 2 things are happening simultaneously. Story 7. A man got his voice back. Casey Harrell has ALS. The disease took his voice. UC Davis researchers implanted a brain-computer interface that reads the neural signals his motor cortex still sends, signals to muscles that can no longer receive them, and routes them to a speech synthesizer. He can speak again. The system learned his voice patterns from recordings made before the disease progressed. What he produces now is not a generic synthetic voice. It sounds like him. Story 8. A clock that reads biological age at the cell level. A Stanford research team published an aging clock in Nature Medicine this week, peer-reviewed, that measures the biological age of 40 distinct cell types separately. Not the body as a whole, each cell type independently. One finding stands out. In people who carry the APOE4 gene variant, aged astrocytes, a class of brain support cell, triple the risk of Alzheimer's disease. The gene variant alone doesn't explain the risk. The age of a specific cell type does. Story 9. The first license to build a fusion power plant. Helion Energy received the first license in history to build a commercial fusion power plant. Commonwealth Fusion's 400-megawatt arc reactor is in development alongside it. Fusion has been 30 years away for 60 years. The licensing step does not move that target forward by itself. What it does is convert fusion from a physics problem into a regulatory one, a problem of a different kind, with a different set of solvers. Story 10. A beam 100 million times brighter than the sun. BioHub researchers used a cryo-electron microscope with a laser phase plate to image more than half the proteins inside an intact cell in its native environment. The beam is approximately 100 million times brighter than the sun. It runs for fractions of a second. Before this technique, getting a clear look at these proteins meant isolating and purifying them, studying them outside the cell, removed from the native surroundings that shape how they behave. Story 11. Solar outproduced coal in the United States. For the first time in recorded history, U.S. solar generation outproduced U.S. coal generation in a measurable period. This is not a projection, it is a measurement. The energy mix is shifting. The milestone does not mean coal is finished or solar has won. It means the crossing point happened, and it happened this week. Story 12. Free AI glasses for every blind U.S. veteran. Meta announced this week that it will provide AI-powered smart glasses at no cost to every legally blind veteran in the United States. The glasses read the environment aloud: text, faces, obstacles, surroundings.
Control. The week started with the government taking it, pulling a model off the market, not because the company failed, but because the government decided it wasn't ready. It moved through 500 versions of the same story in different clothes, $1 trillion on paper in one man's hands because a single IPO folded 4 businesses into one. 4 CEOs asking Congress to regulate them because they believe their own technology is moving faster than anyone's ability to say no. A city council voting 9-0 to stop building the buildings the industry needs. A draft bill that would tell states they don't get to write those rules. Every AI story this week was a version of who decides. Not what the technology can do, who decides whether it runs. Then the science block. A man who lost his voice got it back. Not a voice, his voice. Learned from recordings, returned through a wire. Stanford found that it's not the gene that predicts Alzheimer's risk. It's the age of a specific cell. Helion got a license. A beam 100 million times brighter than the sun looked inside a cell without breaking it open. Solar crossed coal. Control can be taken, it can be returned, it can be earned at the cell level, one astrocyte at a time. The week asked who gets to decide. It also showed you what happens when that decision goes right. That's 12 Stories. We'll be back next week.
12 Stories. The knowledge, clarity, and insight you have been waiting for.